Welcome, everyone, to our panel on invalid traffic and supply chain fraud in the programmatic ecosystem, protecting your brand and ensuring sustainable growth. I'm Maddie Boudreau, Director of Content Strategy and Development here at Pixalate. We're excited to bring you this conversation in collaboration with Start.io, a leader in the programmatic advertising ecosystem. Today, we'll discuss the evolving threats in invalid traffic, from bots and fake users to supply chain fraud, like unauthorized sellers and bid duplication. We'll also dive into strategies for mitigating these risks while protecting your brand reputation and financial performance. As a reminder, we'll be taking questions throughout. Please be sure to utilize the comment box to share any thoughts or questions, and feel free to direct them at any one of our panelists. Let's get started with introductions. Joining me today are Brooke Huntley, VP of Product Marketing at Pixalate, and Omer Puled, VP of Product at Start.io. Thank you both for being here. I'm going to pass it over to Brooke first to share a bit more about herself and her work.
Thanks, Maddie, and hi. My name's Brooke Huntley. I'm the VP of Product Marketing at Pixalate. I have the pleasure of introducing Pixalate's ad fraud and online privacy compliance solutions to the market and engaging with customers in conversations like this one today to foster industry thought leadership and drive initiatives that help improve the quality of the advertising ecosystem.
Hi, I'm Omer Peled, the VP Product at Start.io. I would like to thank you first for inviting me today. I highly appreciate the opportunity being here. A bit about myself. I've been in this industry for over a decade, working with leading companies on the supply side. Start.io is a sell-side omnichannel advertising platform powered by real-time mobile audiences.
Let's begin with an overview of where we stand today with invalid traffic. IVT has evolved over the years. Pixalate is currently detecting more than 45 different types of invalid traffic, from high-risk CTV and mobile apps to compromised data centers, to unauthorized sellers and high-risk supply paths. Invalid traffic types and the mechanisms used in ad fraud have evolved alongside the evolution of media and technology. But what holds true is the impact fraud has had on a company's reputation and financial health. Let's look at some of the recent stats regarding levels of ad fraud today. Brooke, can you get started by sharing a bit about IVT research that Pixalate produces?
Yes, happy to, Maddie. At Pixalate, we publish hundreds of research reports each quarter via our ad fraud and compliance research group. They are reports on a broad range of topics, from quarterly IVT benchmarks to top grossing apps to quantifying the unidentified CTV bundle ID crisis. To keep it relevant to today, I wanted to provide a baseline for invalid traffic within the mobile app ecosystem. In Q2 2024, Pixalate reported the open programmatic mobile app ad marketplace reached 20% invalid traffic rate. That was up from 18% IVT recorded last year in Q2. So as we can see, the IVT rates, although they fluctuate year over year, are almost a quarter of a budget, which is pretty significant when you consider the financial implications and financial risks of that. In addition to looking at the overall IVT rates, Pixalate reports on the most common types of IVT as well, so that we can track and monitor what types of threats we need to be most concerned about. So when it comes to those 45 types of IVT that we measure, what's coming out on top as the most common or most impactful is display impression fraud, as well as device ID stuffing specific to mobile. Display impression fraud accounted for 21% share of voice of invalid traffic within mobile apps. And when it came to device ID stuffing, that had about 19% share of IVT. So this was measured in September in North America, but gives us a good idea of what are the most common types. Now, when we look at this on an app level and how many apps are impacted by certain types of IVT, we actually see that data center IVT has the highest volume of apps impacted, with 77,000 apps impacted in the Google Play and Apple App Stores. So this gives us just an idea of the range of threats. As you can see, it's extensive. It evolves over time. So I'd love to hear, Omer, from your perspective, what range of threats are you most concerned about when it comes to traffic quality?
Absolutely. So invalid traffic actually has shifted from basic bot-driven that it used to be to a much more complex schemes like supply chain fraud, bid duplication, and malicious traffic. It's no longer just about identifying fake clicks or impressions as we used to have it several years ago. So those threats are constantly jeopardizing the industry as a whole. I want to share with you a recent study from TAB that is highlighting that IVT efforts actually have reduced losses, serving advertisers an enormous amount of $11 billion dollars in US during 2023.
That's a significant number. It is great to hear that's being saved. Brooke, can you share a bit more on the technical side of how Pixelate approaches identifying and addressing the evolving threats?
Sure. So as we mentioned, there's 45 different types of IVT that we measure. They're evolving and changing over time, but we look at it from more of a macro perspective. We constantly monitor fraud on a multi-dimensional level, meaning in any one bid request, we have to consider the probability of fraud across multiple vectors. So, when I break it down, it comes into kind of like four different categories. We're looking at things on an app or publisher level. So, is this app or publisher saying, they are someone that they're not, and they're actually spoofing inventory? On a traffic level, is that traffic coming from a compromised IP address? Maybe it's on compromised device ID. Then we look at it on a network level. Is this a high risk data center? Is it a high risk SSAI or proxy gateway? And then lastly, the area that is being more scrutinized in recent years is supply path fraud or supply chain fraud. And when we look at the different entities and combinations of entities within the supply chain, we can identify where any combination of buyer or seller could increase in a risk of invalid traffic. But we're also identifying unauthorized sellers within the supply chain. So we've developed tools to dissect the supply chain object, to identify what's going on across each individual node within the supply chain for any one transaction, to get more of a macro perspective on supply chain fraud and making sure that what a buyer is buying is actually coming from someone who's authorized to be selling it, and that the less hops or the less intermediaries involved reduces the overall IVT risk. Another thing I'll note about Pixelate's approach to invalid traffic on a more technical level is that IVT has to be handled with nuance and probability. Probability scores and reason codes are provided for every type of IVT that we flag, which empowers our clients to take more of a precise approach to blocking or reducing IVT without jeopardizing what might be inventory goals, fulfilling campaigns, or financial goals. So if you're not getting specific reasons or probabilities for something being IVT, then you may be blocking more than you need to be, because maybe you think it's at an app level, but it's actually just at a network level. So understanding the nuances across all of those different dimensions helps our customers make more precise decisions when blocking for invalid traffic. One thing I would like to hear on that from Omer is, how do you balance blocking IVT with financial goals, with, revenue goals, and specifically delivering on, campaign performance?
Sure. So at Start.io, actually, we are using multiple methods to overcome and protect our supply and demand side. We are using both proprietary technology along multiple third-party tools. This is coming to protect both sides, both the supply and the demand side. And this is all being combined and aggregated into a one single AI engine that allow us to monitor and to provide performance. Having all of this data together into one place, allowing us to look on many things, like including requests, impressions, clicks, the latency that being provided, and allowing us to enable actually and deal with frauds that being combined and optimized in this way. So this method in an overall look is allowing us not just to detect the issues, but also to restrict them in real time.
So I think you're touching on a key point here I want to dive into a little deeper is you mentioned the use of AI. Uh, Pixalate provides on-prem IVT solutions, meaning we give you the data for specific vectors that have been flagged as invalid traffic or high risk. And in which case, then you can kind of combine our data along with what you're seeing on your end, your first party data, and leveraging that to train AI to kind of build your secret sauce. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So the idea is to win from the two ways. Okay, one way is to rely on some commodity solution like Pixalates that will allow us to protect from malicious traffic and then fraud. But on the other side, to take leverage of the first party data that we are having coming out of embedded devices, coming out from the user level data that we are providing, taking all of this data into one, let's say, system or centralized way that will allowing us to protect better in a better way the supply that will be connected to the demand.
Fraud not only costs money, but also can damage reputation. Omer, leading up to this discussion, you mentioned the threats IVT has both financially and reputationally. I'd love if you could share a little bit more about that now with our audience.
Certainly. So financially, invalid traffic leads not just to wasted ad spend, but it could also affect the trust that being created by your partners. So it's not just affecting the revenue, but could also cause or lead to some lack of trust from the partners that you're working on. So at Start.io, reputation is a top priority for us. We are working all the time to ensure the inventory is trustworthy, not just for immediate financial returns or to protect the revenue that we're currently having, but also to build a longer term relationship with our partners. This means we are relying on several tools, but majorly tools that coming from Pixalate. So let's talk about Pixalate Seller Trust Index and the chain object validation that are actually available from Pixalate, and using them to protect and to provide a better reputation. So relying on this index, Start.io is actually being ranked higher than 80% of the US market. And this is allowing us to go with trusted supply and actually creating a higher reputation or high reputation and creating high yield.
Totally agree that trusted supply is key to maintaining good reputation, and we know it helps combat IVT. On that note, we, do have some interesting research that we can share regarding the supply chain object. So, just a quick sidebar, the supply chain object is an industry standard. It was launched in 2018 and really started to see more significant traffic in 2022. The way I like to think about it is like a ledger of any one transaction to track all companies or parties involved in any one bid request. So the number of people involved in selling and reselling any one ad impression should be logged in the supply chain object that's passed along with the bid request. What Pixelate does is we dissect this data to evaluate what's happening in that full supply chain and identify between all of the sellers and resellers, where is there increased risk for invalid traffic, and are there potentially any entities within that supply chain that are not authorized to be selling that inventory. So recently, Pixelate published a report for Q3 2024 on ad seller misrepresentation for mobile apps. It found that 814 million mobile app ad spend went through unauthorized direct sellers. So that's 12% of all mobile app open programmatic ad impressions went through sellers who were not authorized. Now, we define an unauthorized direct seller as the first seller within the supply chain object is not listed in the publisher's appads.txt as a direct seller. So one could suggest that this could just be a benign issue where the appads.txt file is not updated and not representing the sellers correctly as a direct seller. So what we did was we looked at, well, what is the IVT rate associated with these unauthorized direct sellers in these transactions? And Pixalate found that it's a 65% higher IVT rate in the traffic that's associated with an unauthorized direct seller. So 65% higher risk of IVT. And that baseline of IVT in mobile app was 20%. So that, financial implications of that, reputational implications of that, when we're talking about unauthorized sellers that may not be considered true IVT, but it is highly correlated to risk of IVT. So these are important things that we're looking at and why everyone is pushing for supply path optimization, increased transparency is because when you do that, you see that you also start to eliminate more invalid traffic. I would love to hear, Omer, from you. How are you guys using the supply chain object, validating that and making sure that you're working with inventory that's represented transparently?
Sure. So actually, we are leveraging the SEO score to ensure high quality and trustworthy sellers and trying to mitigate some risk like the invalid traffic. So basically, the SEO allowing us to or help us to evaluate key seller behavior, including compliance with platform guidelines, transaction consistency, and fraud prevention measures.
Have you seen an improvement in your IVT rates as you've started to leverage the supply chain object and validating the supply chain object more?
Definitely. As soon as we started to use the SEO, um, I believe it reduced our score by 10% or something.
That's what we're finding is that, these standards are in place for a reason. Transparency is, important because it helps improve and reduce IVT overall. And you mentioned our seller trust index. This is a tool that Pixalate provides the industry. It's actually free and open to the public. We recently added supply chain object into the scorecard for the seller trust index. So this helped us identify, more detail within each individual ad transaction so that we can uncover more sellers involved in those transactions. That expanded our rankings to over 580 different sellers globally. And it also gave us the type of data we needed to be able to break this down into a country level ranking. So, as you mentioned, Start.io is doing very well in the U.S. market within our rankings, and it's likely because you've been focused on enhancing your quality through supply chain object verification and optimizing your inventory to focus on more direct sellers. I think it's really important for the industry to have that level of transparency and what we like to call at Pixelate a glass box approach to sharing data so that we can help the industry move forward overall. So I'm just really happy to hear that you're leveraging that tool, and of course, staying ahead of the curve and already using the supply chain object to validate your inventory.
All right. It's really great, as you said, hearing from the horse's mouth and from you directly, how Start.io has been able to utilize the tools and to maintain good standing reputationally. The seller trust index and our other tools are designed to provide transparency and actionable insights. By ranking sellers based on their inventory quality, we help buyers and publishers make data-driven decisions. Additionally, our new country level and supply chain features give our clients even more control over their reputation management efforts. I'd like to move into strategies for mitigation and optimization. Brooke, just passing it on to you to start to get into some of those mitigation strategies.
Sure. To talk a little bit about mitigating these threats to, financial costs, as well as reputation, Pixelate focuses on making sure that we help our clients close the loop on detection, but also prevention. And so many of our clients come to us and leverage our pre-bid blocking solution or our analytics solution to scan IVT and then optimize on their end. But what we find is that there's, the best use case is to be able to kind of work all of these into, one cohesive approach so that you get the detection, blocking, optimization, and planning as well. So from post-bid scanning and analyzing IVT to the pre-bid blocking data feeds where you're digesting that list and applying that to the traffic on your side. But also within our media ratings terminal is a tool that can be used for pre-planning, making sure that you have the insights needed on inventory, apps, publishers, sellers, resellers before you partner with them, before you bring them into your supply. So with that, we'd like to hear just a little bit, Omer, from your side. When it comes to your approach, it's not just scanning, it's not just blocking. You've kind of stair stepped into a multi-pronged approach to preventing IVT.
Sure, I'm happy to share. So actually, we started with the Pixalate integration with a post-bid only solution. And later we decided to add the pre-bid to enable actually a real-time blocking. This is coming combined with, let's say, our secret sauce or the blending of the mixture of logic that allowing us to optimize the IVT protection. So we are relying, as we said, on the Pixalate along the internal fraud detection tools, which are actually taking leverage of some data that we could collect from the embedded devices, enrich data that is coming out of the mobile devices, along some relying on data flow of the users, which is providing the user behavior flow. And all of that being combined into a one system that allow us to protect the inventory and allowing us on one end to create a premium inventory coming out of the supply that is being connected to the demand and gaining the trust of the demand that we are providing them let's say the qualified inventory that's being sent.
It's great to hear, Omer, how Start.io is able to use Pixalate to mitigate those risks and protect your brand. I'd love to kind of shift into the role of reputation in driving revenue. Reputation and revenue are clearly very deeply connected. We've discussed, Omar, the importance of reputation, but how are you leveraging reputation to drive growth?
Sure. So reputation is critical for building trust. We have seen that by improving our ranking on tools like the Seller Trust Index, we're able to secure more private and preferred deals. As we said, curation is actually the ability to create deals that you're creating a premium inventory that being sent to the demand, and the demand is trusting you, and they are willing to get, let's say, the qualified the traffic. So this is not just allowing to enhance the revenue, it is also allowing to strengthen the relationship with the demand and the ability to rely on a qualified inventory that will be sent to those demand partners.
And I'm just curious from kind of like a macro perspective, you know, there's various ways to I guess indicate a reputation or that someone would have a positive or negative reputation. What are some other factors that you feel are really at play? Obviously the we're talking about Pixelate Seller Trust Index is a public source for reputation. But talk to us a little bit more about, other ways or other things that you do to build reputation in the industry.
Yeah, so as we said, reputation is crucial and it's a must, and you build it by creating the trust by the partners, but it's also affecting laterally the campaign effectiveness, the ability for you to monetize better, and the ability to, as we said before, to create the long-term partnership, not just to build something fast, to build the revenue, but actually allowing advertiser that prefer to work with some, let's say, trusted vendors and to get some premium inventory or qualified inventory to get what they need. So this is all of that is crucial. And overall reputation allowing to shape any business. So for a Start.io, but for any business, the health and the sustainability in the programmatic ecosystem.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to dive a little deeper into, we talked a little bit about curation. I would love to hear more about what goes into curation and maybe with some of the challenges that you're facing, as you're trying to meet the demand of buyers for more direct, more premium inventory.
Yeah, so with the ability of curation, actually, you're trying to provide an premium inventory and to go out to some demand with either preferred or public deals that you will provide to the demand partners. So it's crucial. I'm putting two points here. One, you need the supply to be very, very qualified. It needs to be rocket proof and needs to be uh, uh, something that will meet the qualification that the demand is looking for. On the other side, you want to connect this supply to demand that will take this trust and that will give you later on a high CPM or a higher yield according disqualified. So the logic is to actually to protect the supply and the demand, to take qualified supply and to sell it, let's say, premiumly to some demand and get it.
And just another follow-up question on that is how much of kind of like first party data or using audience data is in conflict with the concept of curation, because if you think about programmatic's kind of overall promise is find your audience anywhere, right? And so it was really the birth of the programmatic when people started to leverage their first party and third party audience data to target their audience regardless of where the inventory was. So, now that the pendulum feels like it's swinging back towards content and quality of that inventory, are you finding it difficult to kind of balance the demand of both finding the right audience within that quality inventory?
So as a company that is dealing both on the programmatic ecosystem, but also providing a mobile audiences, and we're collecting all of this data in real time, the ability to connect this audience into a curation deal or a deal that will be sent to the demand is crucial, because then you are able to do a better targeting of the audience that will be sent to the specific demand partners. Let's illustrate high viewability users or valuable users according some methods of shoppers or e-commerce or any other category. So this is essential to provide, as we said, we want to protect the inventory to be qualified, but on the other side, it needs to be targeted well to the curated deal and to be relevant and to be focused to the demand what they're looking for.
Yeah, it's not an easy job you have on the side. Yeah,
Not a
thank
problem.
you.
Well, this is certainly a subject that we can talk for hours on, but unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up. As we do, I'd like to reflect on some key takeaways. It sounds like fraud mitigation is not just about protecting revenue, but also about preserving the trust and reputation that underpin long term success. To thrive in this ecosystem, sellers need to balance financial outcomes with integrity, leveraging tools and strategies that address the complexity of today's fraud landscape. Omar, I'd love to pass it over to you and then to Brooke for any final points that you'd like to wrap up with.
Sure, I will happy to wrap up a little bit and to share. So we are, as an SSP, we're actually facing the challenge of improving the outcome, the revenue, and the yield. This is super, super important for us because we're running a business that is actually running the revenue. But on the other side, we are all the time looking to boost and to maintain our reputation, which requires zero tolerance for malicious traffic. So actually, we are really relying on the ability to create, as we discussed, the trust on one end, but the ability to create a qualified or relevant traffic that will be sent. So to allow that, actually, collaboration is a key. Working with partners like Pixalate and investing in those tools along the internal tools, this is super, super essential for us. And this is our story of success. This is what is providing the high quality inventory and the ability to provide the relevant needs for the demand that we're being connected to.
Yeah, I think touching on collaboration as a key word there, not just collaboration with, partner relationships here, but just with the industry as a whole. Invalid traffic and ad fraud impacts everyone in the industry. There are financial reputational risks for everyone, not just, sell side and the ad tech companies in the middle. But, it's something that we have to address as a collective industry. Pixalate is, empowering customers as well as the industry with research, open data sources like our Seller Trust Index, providing that glass box view into where the risks are, how to then mitigate those risks, and letting the data speak for itself, which I think we can agree the data is showing that we still have a long way to go in fighting ad fraud, and that as we continue to address it, there will continue to be new threats and new ways for fraudsters to make money. So this is an always on problem and something that we as an industry, as I mentioned, need to collaborate to continue to address going forward as it evolves.
Thank you so much, Brooke and Elmer, for this engaging conversation. Just a reminder, I know we're at the very end here, but we are still taking questions. So please be sure to leave any comments or questions in the comment box that's provided. We really would love to hear from you and plan to revisit this conversation in the new year. We really also look forward to the next time we can all sit down together. So with that, thank you so much for joining, and we'll sign off.